Hey everybody, it's Savraj Ora here with the Distro Boss Podcast. I'm on with Hassan Akthar, former MD of GenCanna, a business involved with CBD. He's in the health and wellness space and nutraceutical space. He's got his hands in quite a few cookie jars. We're looking to hear about how he transitioned from everyday work life into these sorts of businesses, and perhaps we can even glean some insights into how to do it ourselves in terms of the recipe, the step by step. So, Hassan, look, we're really interested to know. I mean, GenCanna, the CBD world of hemp and cannabis. I know it's not the active ingredient with CBD, but you've got to shed some light in that, and also the current things that you're doing right now.
Yeah, hi, Sabraj. Great to speak to you, and appreciate your time. Yeah, so as you said, I am the former MD of a global CBD company, predominantly American based. Prior to me taking this role, I'd founded a group of CBD businesses, which we started in 2018. We went to kind of family offices and raised funds, and kind of started at ground zero and grew that business to one of the largest kind of distros in Europe within our space. So a lot of the brands, for example, that you see in Holland and Barrett, or your Asdas and Boots and what have you, we are probably involved in 70 to 80% of those brands, whether it's kind of providing active ingredients or manufacturing for them, or doing some kind of R&D for new product development. That particular business was basically acquired by GenCanna, who's probably one of the largest processors of hemp in the world. They're backed by a New York hedge fund. So we were acquired by them in September 2021. I stayed on to kind of grow that business across Europe. We had regional offices, mainly dealing in kind of product development and distribution and sales. I then kind of exited that in September last, 1st September this month, after 2 years of staying on after the acquisition and kind of doing that whole process. I'm now leaving the hemp and CBD industry to kind of move on to things like mushrooms and other nutraceuticals. And we spoke about this before, but nutraceuticals are basically alternatives to pharmaceutical drugs, with healing benefits and what have you.
And
Things
these
like
and these are normally without the active, sort of the psychoactive ingredient. Yeah, like when you talk about mushrooms and moving out from the CBD and hemp and into mushrooms, I'm immediately, oh, okay, mushrooms. I'm thinking, colors and all sorts of things, but you're talking about, no, you're talking about the non-psilocybin, non-active. These are just
That's right. That's
healthy
right.
mushrooms.
So these are everything that we do. Firstly, is completely legal. There are regulations now that have come in play with CBD, but they don't fall within the pharmaceutical side of regulatory requirements. They fall under the Food Standards Agency, the FSA. So there's a whole load of safety studies and tests and things that you have to go through on the product, and that takes months and months, and it costs a tremendous amount of money to ensure that the product is safe. Because when you are kind of clouding the water with THC, for example, there's a high risk there, and obviously it's a controlled substance, so it's very, very tricky, and you don't want to be caught on the wrong side of the law. But as far as mushrooms are concerned, these are again similar concept, but not doing anything psychedelic or related to psilocybin. These are all functional mushrooms, things like lion's mane, reishi, chaga, several others, but they all have different benefits. Again, because these are basically classed as food supplements, you don't necessarily always have a lot of testing from a health perspective. like clinical studies, for example. You do certain products, but the vast majority don't. There are some ingredients that are proven to have certain health benefits, but the ingredients that we deal with tend to be quite novel and new, and people are kind of getting on to trend with them recently. And that's why we are now conducting kind of early stage clinical studies, and that's in conjunction with a university.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
so this is my new project myself now. I've kind of exited GenCanna and CBD, and now moving into things like nootropics and mushrooms and adaptogens and things like that, to make kind of really unique products that have a real good benefit for a particular ailment. So it could be for things like fatigue and stress and focus and cognitive benefits, basically things that are really good for your brain, to make you productive. And then it's about the ingredients, but then how they are delivered in an end product. What is the best form, what is the most popular form, how do people like to take a particular vitamin or supplement. Do they want to take a capsule quick and easy, or do they prefer it in a drink, like a powdered form, to mix it in like a coffee type? There's gummies, there's topicals, so there's so many different ways which you can consume these products, and how what kind of benefits you want to obviously gauge from these. But it's down to individual preferences, but we look at what's most popular and what the market is demanding, and then we would go away and make these products. So the areas that we're really focused on, like I said, nootropics and what have you, but also
So
products for anti-aging.
Nootropics, anti-aging is cool. Like, so I wanted to just go back on nootropics because, so can you explain what nootropics is? I just feel like we just want to get clarified on that. Like, I feel
so nootropics are basically ingredients and products that help with the cognitive functions of the body, basically your brain, things that I mentioned before, and they actually have an effect.
Right.
So mushrooms are definitely up there, and then you've got adaptogens. So adaptogens are released in the body when the body is in a kind of a stress situation, and then your body releases adaptogens to kind of calm you and relax you. Things like ashwagandha, for example, can be taken for adaptogens, various others as well. Some of them have very complicated names, to be honest with you. So I struggle myself at times, but they're really good to kind of help bring your stress levels down, and to kind of combat things like anxiety.
Yeah. I heard my wife speaks about ashwagandha. It's like really, like, she makes these smoothies, I think, with it or something like that.
Again, that's another way in which you consume the product, and we've done a tremendous amount of research into what's popular, and how important is flavor, for example, because some of these ingredients don't taste very well, and then you're kind of trying to get a good flavor profile, but then you don't want to add things that are bad for you, sweeteners and sugar and all this type of thing, and then you're finding natural alternatives. So there's a lot of work that goes into things like formulations, and that's where we can really help people where if they say, look, I want to kind of set up my own online store, for example, my own brand. I don't know much about supply chain, and because when you're going into supply chain, it gets very complex because of minimum order quantities, and various other things. But if you haven't got deep pockets, it's kind of hard to start. But we've made it kind of the entry a lot easier and much lower. The barriers are much lower. So if you've got an idea and you want to focus on the brand, for example, you want to have a product for menopause. To take one example, some ladies, for example, they're at home, they want to work from home, they suffer with these symptoms themselves, tried certain ingredients and think that this really works well. We want to help other people who are in a similar position, but don't want to work full time, and we've set them up with products, and they've created their own brand and gone out and kind of done their own sales models. There was people that did like the Avon type parties, and going to your home and kind
Oh,
of
like the
making that personable thing. Yeah.
multi-level marketing, network marketing.
Yeah, they've done that because that worked well for them. You've got other people, for example, young students that want to kind of capitalize on social media. You know, you see all of these ads now coming up on phones and different social media platforms, you know, targeted ads and what have you. You know, there's that element. So people want to just focus on selling. You know, we've worked with celebrities in the past. That again just want to kind of be the face of a product, so we've done things like that as well. So there's so many different ways to get involved, and again we're here to kind of help people, you know, develop their own product range and their own brand and their own business, so they can hopefully become profitable and get to a position where, you know, as we spoke about before, that they're not just reliant on kind of a 9 to 5 job, because we know how hard things are out there at the moment. Everybody's kind of looking for a extra bit of coin, you know.
So hang on. Let me just backtrack just a little bit. So you've created you created a platform in a sense, right? So you're saying that people can create. You're essentially the source. You know, you're kind of like you're going to provide all the supply that someone could need, and they could build their business around the things that you can give them. So you're saying, hey, look, we can give you the mushrooms, we can give you these anti-aging products, we can give you stuff for menopause, we can help you with nootropics. These are the sort of the products that we have, and within these product lines we have the various different applications or ways to consume them. We have the topical creams, we have the this, the that, the this. And so if I wanted to start a company that was, say, focused on, I don't know, like, yeah, so better energy and you know, how to have how to be on top performance all day long, right? That's the usual one that people, well, that's what I've seen a lot of, put it that way. And you say, I've got all these ingredients, I can get them off you, you can provide a clean supply chain, so I can wrap that up into a business, and then it's down to me to go find my customers, but you'll be my, essentially you'll supply me.
Yeah, so basically what you've spoken about there is essentially a white label service. That is absolutely something that we can do, but I think it's more about the value add that we can kind of provide as well.
Okay.
It's not just about kind of giving people a product and you know, off they go. You know, we want to be able to provide them with further guidance, you know, really understanding, you know, the vertical that they want to go down, and understanding who their target audience is, and kind of maybe there's potential partnerships we could look at for certain institutions that we've got close ties to. Then there's so many different avenues we can help. It's definitely.
How did you get involved in all this? Like, what made you like, this is like, you've really built something up here. It sounds like you know, that is it GenCanna, the one that was bought out by the hedge fund in New York? Like, it seems like you built and grown, and then you've kind of like, what is this, like a perfection? It's like, this is a perfected version of whatever you were doing in the past, or like a slight like tangent of that same sort of business into just slightly different areas.
It's definitely it's similar, but the ingredients and the customers are completely different. You know, CBD was kind of one thing, but you know, this is a whole range of other ingredients, and these ingredients that have been there before anyway. And CBD is quite a novel thing as well. It's quite new over the last kind of probably 10 years or so. I mean, again, it has been. I mean, cannabis has been used for you know, centuries, and obviously there's certain restrictions recently and what have you. But you know, things do evolve, and there's benefits in plants for all types of different people, and you know, it's got to be controlled and regulated, because you know, some people do have adverse effects to them, so you've got to be really careful to make sure that your products are safe. And that's what we do guarantee, that our products are safe, they've been tested, and the way that they've been processed, for example, everything's been done at kind of highly accredited, almost pharmaceutical level laboratories.
Yeah. As a from a business like entrepreneurial standpoint, like, I mean, it sounds like you've got, you know, you're knee deep into that world. Like, you know you clearly know a lot about everything in there. It's like I say, like, some people know a little about a lot. You know a lot about a lot. It's or a lot about a little. It's like there's a lot there. I feel like that's a growing market. There's so much, I think, regulation that's gonna be thrown at it down the road. I feel like this is one of those places. But I mean, you seem to be navigating it well enough. You know it. But before you even, like, if I'm thinking, what I'm trying to get to is, like, what did you do to, like, get involved with all this? Like, what was your day job? When did you decide to get involved with this line of work? I mean, to get involved there, especially when CBD's like just come out, and it's like, I mean, I guess CBD's been around for a long time, but I think it just became mainstream a few years ago. And I think it was like suddenly these, like, people start to recognize that, okay, there's no psychoactive ingredient in here, the THC has been removed, and this is CBD. And, like, when did you realize that that was the direction you wanted to go? Like, what were you doing? Were you doing did you have a day job? Did you have a business prior to that? Was this something that you always wanted to do? Like, what made you jump into that world?
Yeah, I think I mean, I've always wanted to have my own business. I've grown up around business my whole life. My uncle had a business, and I used to go around to the office at kind of 6, 7 years old. It was a taxi company. But for me, it was everything. I used to love going around there and learning and being around that environment, and thinking of new ideas, and even going around doing kind of dropping cards off through people's doors. I loved it. So I've always kind of been eager to get involved and have that myself one day. But you've got to have the right skill set. You have to learn and be good enough and be capable. And nobody starts off being capable and having everything in order to be successful. You've got to start somewhere, and it's about kind of quickly gaining the right level of skills. And for me, I went into sales myself. From kind of IT to property, and just again learning how to manage accounts and customers, dealing with pricing margins, and getting my head around all these types of very, very important things. And kind of I think I started like several side hustles while I was working. Some of them work out, some of them don't, but it's a part of the journey, really. And then you do eventually come across something, and my partner, we were in the cybersecurity world before, and he was out in California, in Silicon Valley, and he came across CBD and was very popular in the US. And we always find that the UK market is a few years behind what's going on in the US. And we've tried other products before, but nothing really worked well. We tried it with this one. It was started off with a packet of lozenges, basically CBD sweets. We thought we could maybe sell those because they're really good. It's a good product, but when you look at again, this is where you kind of learn, is when you look at the actual cost of importation and price, your cost of goods and everything, and what the margin ends up being, and it really made things complicated, because we had a good product, but we just outpriced ourselves. But I really like the industry. I've always been into health and wellness, and I really like.
That was your first step into it. You
Yeah,
found
that was my first experience, from my partner sending me these lozenges to kind of experiment with and see what the market thought of them.
Right.
But they were too expensive. We couldn't make any money on them. But it definitely caught my interest. Loved the idea of CBD and the benefits it was shown to have on people.
Right.
Again, I was a bit confused with the whole THC thing and kind of trying to get my head around that. And then, you understand that the products are legal, or they're not illegal. But yeah, so we kind of started off with those, and like I said, it was still of interest, and we went on to other products, and things kind of naturally evolve, and you kind of need more resources, because you're trying to buy more, and you need money to go and buy more stock so you can sell it, and customers obviously don't want to pay up front for things. You know how it is, and you've got to provide terms sometimes. So
Right.
you come across these types of obstacles as well.
So when you went through all of that and you're here in the UK now and you're like, okay, so that supplier in the US wasn't great. I mean, for anyone that's like listening to this and thinking, you know what, I've been wanting to get into the CBD market. I've wanted to make a drink like some CBD infused water or some kind of like, green juice or whatever the case it may be, or maybe forget CBD, maybe it's the mushrooms, whatever kind of like, as you call it, as it's known, nutraceutical that they want to get involved with. And they're thinking, how do I get involved? Where do I go to get my supply from? There are places online that you can find, but case in point, you might not be able to price right because they're going to be too expensive. You're going through multiple middlemen. You've got a supply chain there, and you're not talking to source. And if you're not talking to the people that you need to be speaking to get the right kind of pricing. When you're in that kind of position, which I guess to a degree is what you were when you get back. Like you were like, look, like you just knew that you wanted to be in this market, right? You just knew that, all right, I like it. You're curious about the space. It sounds like you're being, you're self-educating. It sounds like, this is the point where you're becoming, in a kind of way, like a healthy obsession about your own business, which is good, right? So how did you go about, like, I mean, I don't want you to give up your supplies and where you get it, or do you manufacture it? It's like, but this is the point where like, okay, so what do you do to scramble to get back into business, to start making money? Because now you're not making money with the guys from the US. How do you kind of reposition yourself strategically here in the UK? And what did you do to make that happen, to make your business start churning up, turning over?
Yeah, I think we kind of took the opposite approach. Rather than finding a random product and just trying to slot that in somewhere. It was kind of going back and speaking to these customers, understanding their business models, understanding their product sets, seeing what sells for them, what they're in the market for, and what price, and what other kind of requirements that they might have from a quality perspective, and then trying to kind of find a supplier that can plug that hole. That's how we
So you had your customers in this case were the retail, like sounds like businesses, like these are people that would sell this product, right? So
yes.
are you saying that you'd go to them and you're asking them essentially what it is that they want to buy from you that they can resell, right? So
Yeah, but it wasn't. Sometimes it's not as kind of direct as that. I think it was more so my kind of interest in the industry, and as I was doing my market research, that was one of the things that I was absolutely interested in. But I guess it was a little bit more. I wanted to see what was working on people, the actual consumer, what was benefiting them, and trying to understand that, because things are, when you're in a new industry, there's not a lot of data out there, so you're kind of learning as you go along, and a lot of people were in a similar boat to us, to be fair, and then you've got kind of the brands, for example, like Deep Heat. Let's take them for as an example to use. They've got this wonderful cream and what have you, but have you thought about infusing that with CBD and the benefits it could have? So
right.
we were kind of doing those types of conversations and speaking to these big companies. And again, because it's cannabis, it was there was a lot of walls and a lot of restrictions. People don't want to kind of push the boundaries out that much with cannabis, especially if they're like a household name, and it can cause some problems. So again, you've got to navigate all of that as well. But education was key. Educating people. And for us to understand what the facts are as well, educating ourselves. So having the right communication, with the regulatory bodies, and even things like people like the Home Office. Speaking to them. When you're importing products, when the customs receive the package and they see it's CBD, they think it's cannabis. So they're gonna that's gone off for destruction, or they're gonna seize that. So there was a lot of that happening, and we managed to.
You got a lot of stock loss that you're dealing with, and so how do you deal with like the financials for all that? Like I take it your volume's pretty high. You're selling a lot.
Yeah. So again, banking can be hard as well if you're in the cannabis market, because I think it's obviously cannabis and banks don't want to help, and again, there's a
Wow.
lot of doors that are closed.
Well, like you'll open a bank account and they'll just shut you down.
Yeah, there was a lot of that happening. We were quite lucky because when we went out for funding initially, we got in there with a really good family office from London. We knew them quite well, and they had experience in finance and kind of brokering and all that type of thing, and that helped getting advice from people like that. And again, just having the right team makes a complete difference.
Wow. Okay. So I think like you've got the right team in place. Clearly, you're navigating a lot of red tape.
Yeah,
So if like anyone that's looking to get into this industry has to go in with their eyes wide open, saying, okay, there's going to be challenges. I mean, I didn't even think or even consider banking would be a problem, but clearly it is. Banking, red tape, legal changes consistently. I guess you got to keep really in tune with what's happening in the news. And I guess
yeah.
you got to be closer to it than that, beyond the news. Like you got to know what's happening in the courtrooms.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were doing. There was court cases going on that we were obviously looking into, having our ear on the ground to see what kind of result that they get. But again, now we're in a space where we're through a lot of that, and it's been regulated, and it currently falls under novel foods with the FSA in the UK, and European Food Standards Agency is following similar. But you have to have a novel food license basically to sell here in the UK, and again that's costed us hundreds of thousands of pounds, expert advice, and again it's not something that I'm been kind of knees deep in myself, because it's very sciencey type food testing stuff that they have to do, and you've got to get the right people in for that. So I don't know if I would advise anybody to do that at this particular stage, because there's just so much going on. Products coming off of shelves. People could do their own research. It's definitely a market that's changed and consolidated. We've got product that we would sell for, from an active ingredient perspective, £10,000, for a kilo, and now it's selling in the market for a couple of £100.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it was a wild play. It really was the Wild West. So we really had to make sure that we don't get stung in any way. It took a lot of trips over to the US and Europe as well, to be fair. So it was constantly on a different continent, probably every week,
Wow.
for a year and a half, 2 years nearly.
Yeah.
Absolutely mental, but we managed to kind of navigate our way through. But
How are you scaling up now? Like, are you scaling at the moment, or are you still just kind of positioning your business as or are you just still positioning it? Are you still like putting down the foundations, or would you say you're at the point now where you're expanding, or you're slowly building? So I know you mentioned about the two-tiered model, or if it's more tiers, let me know. Like the multi-level marketing element, or the network marketing element you're talking about, like how you like the Avon approach.
yeah, so our business now, because I've exited that company, we were probably the largest distributor in Europe for our bulk ingredients. I think it kind of, I've done it for 2 years, and I wanted to have another challenge. I felt quite passionate about mushrooms now, to be honest with you. So I wanted to explore that myself and go on this journey again. I think when you're kind of a founder, and you're used to being, and managing your own team and doing things your way, when you then go back into a corporate setting with, very corporate, hedge funds and, that type of structure, and you've got 10 different decision makers, it kind of slows you down, and you kind of get the advantage that we had before, that we were nimble and we could make decisions quickly.
Right.
Whereas now we're like this big tanker that takes, forever to make decisions, and there's forever reporting going on. You're more focused sometimes on what's going on internally as a company than maybe externally, where we should sometimes focus on, for example, our customers and strategic partners.
Like the time when, I remember doing that myself, and I'd be involved with direct selling. I'll be selling lots and lots of different things, even when I set my for companies, and then as a lower level salesperson that kind of grew up the ranks. And the higher you grow in the ranks, I found that where my stresses were, like at the lower levels, it was just, I'm worried about this client. I've got to meet this client. I'm preparing for this presentation to this client, and then that's what I'm stressing about. But as I go up, I start worrying about the presentation I've got to give the board. So I'm worrying about the internal stuff, because and it takes me away from my initial outreach and what made me successful in the job. And now it's suddenly everything's internal. Granted, there's benefits to that, because I'm reporting on people under me who are essentially selling for me, and now I'm taking those statistics and I'm taking that back to a board. So I'm really just showing my results. But if you're talking about initial stresses, that's where it is. And I think I understand that completely. And it does make you want to go back to the kind of nimble, more freer, entrepreneurial style business. I've been there. I've been up, and I've been with companies that definitely got corporate. They got funding, they got VC funding, and they changed completely. The suits come in. Everyone has to dress different. Everyone has to talk different. We all get a whole new email system. Now everyone's CCing everybody, when it was just like text messaging before, because everything has to be now documented within an internal service. There's suddenly all these protocols that can just overwhelm you, and it takes away what I would call the entrepreneurial spirit, and now you're just a machine. But businesses need to become that. Like, to grow and to scale and to build, they do need to become that. But I guess, like, if you're not, it depends on where you are in your own life cycle in terms of what you want to be part of at that time. I think that comes into it a lot. Like, if you weren't ready maybe for GenCanna, you're like, okay, let me just let go of this and go into something that maybe is more of a passion than, maybe CBD. Did that just open the window into that world, and so that's why now you're doing everything? Or is that how that happened?
Yeah, I've always, like I said, I've been into health and wellness. At the end of the day, when you come into this market, you do come across other ingredients and other products and other ailments and things, and you do naturally want to explore those, and that's all that's happened with me. I've got this kind of passion about mushrooms and cognitive ability and health benefits and all that type of thing. So especially in a world now where people suffer with so much kind of anxiety and stress, to find products for people that really gives them a good night's sleep, I think it's really good for me. It feels quite fulfilling. But as far as what we were just speaking about in terms of corporate world, and that it needs to be a healthy balance. Sometimes if can the business run without me? Yes, but the question is, can it grow without me? And then then you start thinking about that, and then I'm thinking, what am I spending most of my time doing? It's really that internal, almost reporting and going through all these processes, and you've spent so much time on it, when your time is more valuable being spent on acquiring customers, or putting new products in, or things that have real value, and what you enjoy doing, what I used to enjoy doing. So I'm going back to that. It's more of I've kind of come back into kind of not being on this great wage, and being in that 9 to 5 comfort. All of that came about, and again, I actually like the hunger. I like risk. I want to start something again from ground zero, but at the same time, we've had so many experiences and lessons that we've learned. We want to apply that now to the new venture. It's not in conflict in any way, because they're different ingredients, different customers, and what have you, and different products as well, to be fair.
So what's your strategy then? Like, how does that fit into a strategy? Like these like, I guess, ideas and plans. Like, what's your next steps if you were to be real specific? Is like,
Yeah,
don't
so
give away your secrets, but like you know, like, but
yeah,
do
so
like,
I'm now, what we're basically doing is launching a group, like a house of brands type of group, where we've got different brands, different products, and different elements. We're starting off with mushrooms and cognitive health. Then you've got things like anti-aging products that we're looking at, and really good unique ingredients, and delivery forms as well. And it's about how we kind of market that, and the science behind some of these products as well, that we're doing studies with the university to make sure that we've got some claims there. We'd eventually look to kind of patent those and commercialize them in some product in the future, hopefully. And kind of really focused on, our previous business was B2B. It was business to business, but I'm now focusing on a D2C model, direct to consumer, and basically online. The world's changed and evolved. Look at what's happening on the high streets. COVID, how that changed people, and being remote, and technology and the internet and AI now as well. The world's in a different place, and how people access, or consumers access products, is different. So I'm launching new products that are accessing the consumer directly through kind of modern ways. So
how is that like? Is that like using like the affiliate model through influencers, or is it kind of like working with, like you said, like with the network marketing sort of the MLM multi-level marketing strategies,
it,
working with parties to essentially sell your product through a parent-child relationship where you have people that kind of group. Am I on the right path here, or am I wrong?
yeah, I mean, there's so many different sales channels and strategies that you can use. I'm more focused on e-commerce now.
Right.
I want people to be buying direct from our website. Yes, influencers and things are one way, but there's various other methods as well. It's about utilizing AI, to basically make sure we're getting our advert, for example, in front of the right people. Making sure that we're really accurate, focused on quality rather than quantity. So that's what I'm going to be doing. We will be making some announcements in the coming week for these brands. We have some funding partners coming on board as well. So that there's so
How does
much.
AI do that? Like, how do you? I mean, I guess you know AI is constantly evolving, and it's kind of hard to find experts on AI. I feel like AI is in and of itself is the expert, and we're just kind of like the looky-loos looking in, right? But like, how do you kind of get AI to help you target your? I guess what you're talking about there is your ideal customer, like your target buyer group. How do you get how does AI fit into that? Like, are you using it to like pick the keywords? Are you using it to like paint the picture of your ideal avatar? And then you've got typical like, pay per click and the usual sort of display banner ad type things, hitting those as close as possible with those people? Or are you trying to just go through other mediums? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, there's so many different apps and tools now, that are basically based on AI, marketing tools specifically. And again, if you do your research online, and you can see there's so many different things. You can build a complete business from your bedroom in a couple of days, and it will do everything for you. You can look at Chat GPT, for example. You can get that writing reports for you, doing financial models for you. That's just one. There's AI based web developers now that you can use. And then there's to kind of take it further. from a marketing standpoint with what these agencies are now doing and how they're incorporating that into their services. Just being really intelligent about gathering data. They have access to so many different segments and individuals and types of buyers now. And how they're going about capturing that again is by utilizing AI and incorporating these types of tools into people's applications now. So again, I'm not an expert at it myself. I'm learning just like everybody else is, but I'm on the case, and we've got some really good tools that we've got our hands on that we're going to be utilizing, and again, everybody can access these types of tools online now.
All right. Okay. So you got the store, you got a model. So you got a store with some nifty AI marketing hacks in the business, and then you've got this network model. So people can come and build their own businesses up, and you can supply the products and they can wrap their own sort of white label around it. Well, that is in and of itself the white label offer, right?
So we have,
you said value add, right? So I presume that's like maybe a website then that you give them like the sales funnel, if anything. So someone could just,
but we can take it kind of from a whole 360 model where we make the whole business for them, the website, the product, the packaging, design, safety studies. We can do the full 360. It just really depends on how much they want us to be involved in. But we have some really, really good designers that can come up with some really good brands as well. And this kind of goes on to, digital marketing now, and branding and all that type of thing. So the business really does spread out quite vastly, and you can, get into whatever you want. And again, this is great for me because we end up giving so many people different opportunities. You've got people that aren't necessarily interested in the product, but they're really like digital marketing, for example. And we do meet some really talented people, and they come on board and do some wonderful things. But yes, it's kind of a whole range of services that we will be providing.
Okay. Right. So let's switch gears a little bit. Just to taper off the conversation of, I guess, the business itself and your entrepreneurial sort of journey, and that it sounds like you've had a crazy ride. Like it sounds like you've had a really educational ride too. It seems like you know a lot, and there's a lot there that you're sharing with us. And I think if anyone's listening, they're going to really understand sort of the nature of the market there. There's quite a lot of pitfalls, and there's certainly a lot of benefits too. But like, how did you self-educate? Was it just through the journey? Was it just through the learning through those pitfalls, or was it like, did you find out from other people? Like how many speed bumps have you come across, and how's that affected? How have you stayed positive about staying in business even with those speed bumps in place?
I think education comes in so many different forms. Experience being one of them. That's the one I like. I like to kind of experience. I mean, you can tell me, that there's a speed bump coming a million times up the road, but I'll still probably hit it. But until I hit it and experience it myself, it's not really going to kind of register for me properly. So I've always been hands-on, want to experience things, kind of fail small but fail fast. So you kind of just catching up all the time. But speaking to the right people, you got to speak and network and speak to experts that really are experts in this field. I'm not really. I mean, we've done some wonderful things, but there's some really, really smart people out there. And I love to have these people on my team. A lot of people always want to kind of be number one and be egotistical, and you've got to kind of get rid of all of that and really humble yourself and learn from you can learn from anybody, to be honest with you. And I've always had that mentality, learning from people and obviously reading helps a lot, keeping up to date with the updates and court cases and things like we spoke about earlier, and seeing how people
you feel like self-help books, and like, if do you feel like those entrepreneurial self-help books work? Do you feel like people can benefit from,
I
plans like
think I used to read self-help books when I was like 15, to be honest with you. And then I stopped reading those. I like to read people's stories and their experiences. People that interest me. I like sports myself. I used to box as an amateur. And again, I can kind of relate to a lot of things to training and boxing as you do in life. So I kind of marry them up somehow. But everybody's got
It
to,
makes total sense. I do the same
yeah,
thing. I use fitness or any kind of sport, any kind of physical activity like that is like, business is very similar. Like you have to, like, even with, like, if you want to use boxing as the example, like you've got to train and you've got to get in the ring, right? So there's one thing is training, but then you've got to get in the ring and start sparring, because that's the only way you're really going to know how to start boxing, like,
yeah,
and I
exactly.
remember,
And it's a different experience, when people go through that, it's something that gives you a bit more of a focus. You see things a little bit differently and clearly. It helps me anyway. When I'm training, I'm a lot more focused and I can see things much clearly. It definitely makes a difference. Again, it's about kind of mind, body, and soul. You've got to make sure your body's fit, your mind's healthy, and your spirit's where it needs to be as well.
yeah.
Uh,
And if
you
you've
know,
got the experience of getting, with that's the planning phase and the preparation phase, right? And then you go into the ring and you're having these experiences, these direct fights. That's kind of like where you've gone through you've done your planning in your bit in terms of your business plan, and then you've gone out and started, and you've started to draw first blood, if you will, and start getting in some money. That's you having your little wins in the ring. That's you getting your experience and your level up. And the more I feel like the more experience you can have in the ring per se, the more likely you're going to be successful in business, because like the old saying goes, like the more you do something, the better you get at it. You can be
yeah,
completely crap or totally like getting obliterated in the beginning, but if you keep at it, eventually you're just not gonna. You're not gonna be as bad as you were. You're gonna be getting better every time. The same tricks aren't gonna work on you because you've been hit by them already. And the same thing works in business. Like if you mess up on your accounts one time, you know how not to do it the next time. You might mess up somewhere else, but you're still progressing and you're taking steps forward. Even if you're slower than you'd like to be, you're still progressing. It's steps in the right direction. I think people need to take that home.
yeah. But I think sometimes people expect that success overnight, and when they start something, it should happen quite quickly. It doesn't normally happen that way, and it's also about kind of the ability to handle pressure.
Yeah.
I hear so many times now people can't, I don't like the pressure, I don't want to be under any stress and all that type of thing. But if you want to, be successful in anything in life, I think you need to be able to handle pressure. And you need to get over that. And
And
if
pressure makes diamonds, right?
yeah, exactly. And if you're under pressure, you should just remind yourself that that's exactly where you need to be. Because if you're not under pressure, you're not growing. In order to grow, you have to go through these types of uncomfortable situations. And that's where the kind of the magic happens, to be honest, when you're feeling uncomfortable and you're being pushed and stretched, but you've got to just come through it. Um, but it's a crazy journey, that I've had and that I've been on, from kind of that full 360 of starting a business and exiting and everything else. We had so many experiences, and especially in this industry, of the Wild West. It's almost like kind of legal drug dealing in some ways. And yeah,
Well,
it's
you're
been,
on that fine line, right? Like you're at the edge of a knife.
yeah,
And I feel like sometimes that's the only place you can make any real money. So I mean, I used to think that a lot. But you can, if you are close to the edge of a knife, and I think working with nutraceuticals, you are very close, because what is considered acceptable and legal today might not be tomorrow. And you could have bought, huge amounts of stock if you're stocking, and then they could change the law on you overnight, and suddenly you're like, well, I need to get rid of this stuff. So now if you start selling, you're going to be in a position where you're breaking the law. So it's like there are risks that you take in business that people don't really recognize. I'd never sell something that's illegal. So Well, what if you just banked your bottom dollar, and I mean everything that you had on something that was legal today, that by midnight tonight became illegal tomorrow? Like, what would you do? It's like,
Yeah.
you got it sitting in a warehouse, right? You just sit, you're gonna fold, or you're gonna try and get rid of some of that, or try and get a refund. Or how are you gonna mobilize that? Because now you've got a whole bunch of illegal stuff with you. So, and that can happen. I could see that happening in that world, especially when you're talking about, what degree of removal is acceptable. Because when you remove like psychoactive ingredients from mushrooms, for instance, like to what degree do you like what's the failure, what's the margin of error there? Because like, what if you left a little bit in?
For, for yeah,
What
so
happened?
so for mushrooms, it's different because they're different strains,
Okay.
different types of mushrooms. The ones that are kind of psychedelic are completely different. The ones
You
that
just
we work
wouldn't
with,
pick those. What about
yeah,
what about cannabis, for instance, with
yeah, but
CBD?
cannabis is completely different. And hemp is different because you have traces of THC, and this is what the problem is in the industry. Because at the end of the day, you do have products on the market that have much higher levels than legal THC levels, basically. And that's what people are trying to control, and institutions are trying to control to make sure that the products are legal and safe, because there is contamination. That there are legal limits of THC, and a lot of products do go over that, but we've done tremendously well in navigating around that. That's why whenever our products have come through customs and they do take a batch to test, we've always been really, really good. The processing, the type of facilities that we have, and the testing that we do is almost at a farmer level. So we take the right precautions, and the number of companies out there that do. You can also make synthetic CBD now. So a lot of that is in the market. A lot of products use synthetic CBD, but what we'll find is people, for example, you've got cancer sufferers with like extreme levels of pain, or end of life patients, that they find CBD doesn't really help. They want the full spectrum of cannabinoids with THC in there.
Right.
And that's what they would go and source and take. And that's what gives them the real relief. So it really is varied as to what type of
That's not legal in the UK, right? Is
no,
that
that's not, no.
right?
But obviously there is a black market and people do get these products.
Yeah.
We've always stayed clear of that, obviously. We tend to operate in a complete legal CBD only, and other minors as well. Things that are really low level on the right side of things, maybe a little bit grey occasionally, where there's a new compound that's come out, and we're not sure where it really sits, but then we kind of, if it is blacklisted, we stay away from that. Like things like Delta, Delta 8 and Delta 9, massive in the US. It's
So how do you scale up? So when you have something new like that, do you kind of just like quickly buy as much of it as you can? You wrap some marketing around it, wrap a sticker on, put a sticker on it, build sales funnels online, start pushing it as hard as you can before it gets before
no, we
you
don't.
don't know
No,
if it
no.
gets removed. You just
We kind of really we take our precautions. We
right.
like to let a new cannabinoid kind of mature into the market. Once we've got a good understanding of where it sits, then we would
I
be
remember.
involved in it.
Yeah, I remember like, and the reason I said that is because it takes me back to this time when I just got started into the fitness game, and you might know this. Remember, ephedra was at one point legal. Like it was one point, it was in pre-workouts.
Yeah,
It was I forget the brand. I probably shouldn't say the brand even if I do remember it. But it was in this very very well-known brand that was sold in most places like GNC and Holland and Barrett. You could buy it, and it had a dose of ephedra in it, which is ephedrine, which would would jump up your adrenaline level, so you
yeah.
could basically run faster, sweat more, and burn more fat. And apparently it would just melt fat off you, and it worked. It did work. It worked for me. I was losing weight, and at the time I was a bit chubby, so I was it was working out really good for me. I liked it. I was a regular buyer for at least like the 3 months that I was aware of it, because very quickly, soon after that, it was suddenly outlawed. You can't have ephedra in it anymore. too many people were like ODing because they were just jacked up on too much of it, and it was like they were getting heart attacks or something crazy.
Yeah.
Or they were kind of making a concentrate out of it. So that's an example of, a company, and that company, I don't know if they had to rebrand or if they went off the market. They disappeared for a long time. And I don't know if they're back. They may have had to, and I guess that's what I'm worried about. If I were to go into the world of CBD hemp, if I was to go into the world of nootropics, I guess with the mushrooms, I'm safer because it's completely different strains that not non-psychoactive. So that's really more me concerning myself with, what the flavor of the month is. Are people still concerned with, do they still think mushrooms are great? And one look at Netflix and you type in mushrooms, you see the amount of like shows about that. You're going to be, the market's there for you. But like when it does come to things like the hemp and the CBD and perhaps the nootropics, you talked about some other stuff there that can help you or that can affect the mind in some way, shape, or form. Like that company that put ephedra in its pre-workout, do you, when you get involved with a product, do you buy a lot and start scaling up fast to take advantage of that trend so you can capitalize on it quickly? Or do you take a much more like conservative approach and just buy a little at a time? And I'm talking about this from a business standpoint. If you're as an entrepreneur, like, do you go rush through the doors and capitalize, buy as much as you can, sell it as fast as you can? Or are you more cautious in the sense that, I know you said regulatory you are, but from a business standpoint, in terms of supply side and sell side, are you more cautious there too?
Yeah, absolutely. We have to be cautious. We have to be conservative. We don't want to be able, be in a position where we have to destroy stock or end up having to do something illegal or whatever, So, but we're always very, very cautious, and take the correct kind of safety approach. But when it comes to things like legalities and laws, we don't want to be on the other side of that, and we won't take the risk. Our freedom is much more important than making a quick buck, basically. So we don't do that. We, like I said, we do kind of like to see if a new product is maturing, and if there are question marks over whether something will be banned, then we kind of stay away from it. It's a quick flyby, and we've seen so many of them, and we don't really want to be involved in that type of business. We want something that's kind of there with a purpose and there for the long term, and something that we can kind of make a real future with. There are ingredients, other ingredients that, for example, need certain, passes and approvals, that we wouldn't have even thought would, but they fall under things like novel foods, and then they need certain testing done, and it has caused problems in the past. So we like to really make sure we do our due diligence on each ingredient and see where it sits from a regulatory point of view.
Yeah. All right. So if you were to give someone who wants to get involved with this world, so there's two things. There's like someone getting involved with business in general, and then another piece. So one piece of advice to that person, and another piece of advice to someone who wants to get in your world, because it's a big place. There's a lot of doors opening, but there's also doors closing. So what would you say?
I think anybody who wants to get into business, that they need to make sure that they're really driven, that they'll work out how things are done. It's really common sense, to be honest with you. Just make sure that they're really, really driven, can handle pressure, and I think people that want to learn and grow, and don't think that they're kind of know-it-alls, and arrogance and all that type of thing won't help. So I think you've got to really humble yourself and roll up your sleeves. I think you can definitely, in today's day and age, work smarter and not harder. I think there's always people have this thing in their mind that I've got to dedicate my whole life to it, and unless I'm in this position, I can't start a business. But I think you can start at any point in your life, regardless of whatever you're doing. You can make small steps every day, and just kind of, I think the best way to explain it is almost like, planning your escape from prison every day. That's the best way I could really try and describe it. You've got to get serious about it. It's not a joke. Your life is not a joke. I think we're here one day and gone the next. I've had people that are 20 years old, like my cousin who passed away, had a cycling accident, and we take time for granted. We'll do it tomorrow. That there is no tomorrow. You've got to get on with it. Even if you start small, something is better than nothing. Take those small steps. Do your research. Understand. You're buying something and selling it, and what the cost is really not that difficult, to be honest with you. People make it more complicated than what it is. But just make sure that you're willing to work hard, and have a good team. I think a team makes a massive difference, and always go and speak to people that have achieved things in business. We're not talking about people that might have studied for an MBA or something. People that have actually run a business, and made a success of it, and people that maybe haven't made a success of it as well, to understand what you didn't like and what you think you would have done different. Or go and find and make time and speak to these people, and go to events, and get serious, and then the world is your oyster. I'm just a kid from a council estate, and I didn't go to uni, and I'm not really the smartest guy in the room or anything, but I do work hard, and I do like to learn and try things, and I'm very resilient. So I make the most of my skills. So everybody's got skills. It's about how you utilize those skills, and understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, and how you fill those gaps, and yeah, just get cracking. But as far as kind of my industry within health and wellness, it's obviously very, very saturated, and that there are some big players out there in the market, and it's one of the most competitive markets in the world. But I think there's always something to be done, and if you have a really good product, and you can kind of make things stack up, you have a good supply chain, and you can work with people like us, for example, who can really bring you a quality product at a good price, with a real sustainable supply chain, and kind of give you some guidance, and a little bit of a foot up. It definitely helps, and we can do that and support people, and get them going. We can find target markets, and which products we think are on trend, and give some really good advice and support.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I think people are going to really benefit from this. I think it's been really insightful into the world of nootropics, health and wellness. I think I've definitely learned a lot. I think it's consistently going to be, I mean, we think about technology spaces as constantly moving and changing. I think this space moves probably even faster. Legislatively, probably slower, but in terms of products being produced and how people are pivoting on a daily basis, on from the illegal substances to the legal substances, I think there's just so much there. And it's also, I think you could get, you're kind of, perhaps if you're really close to source in the industry, you might even be like dealing with that daily battle of like, well, my margins are this, but if I just sold the other bit, my margins go here. It's like, I guess there could be some of that people have to go up, to come up against if they go into that world. So it's definitely an amazing industry to be in. So hey, look, best of luck. I think we'll speak again. I'd love to hear more about how, especially when something changes in the law. Would love to have you back on, because you seem extremely knowledgeable on that. Would love to have you come back and explain some of that.
No, it's my pleasure to speak to you, and I hope there is something there that someone might benefit from. Always kind of respect anyone who's willing to give it a go. We don't have to know everything, but as long as you've got the heart to give it a go, and to want to make a difference, and to help change your life and your family's life, because that's what we really do it for. They're the people that really make it a success. I think you get people that want to do it for clout, or for the Instagram type stuff, and when the going gets tough, those sorts of people don't really have a real purpose to want to deliver, I think. But people that do it for a real reason, and are really driven, they tend to find a way to kind of make things happen. So yeah, utmost respect to them, and yeah, really good to speak to you. And yeah, I hope we speak again soon.
Yeah, thank you for being here. To everybody else, like and subscribe. We've got more coming. See you next time.